Holter is the magnificent actor that plays Rick in the film, and I'm Niav, and I'm the writer-director.
Writer, director, camera person, motorcycle tire downer, cat wrangler, sometimes mommy figure therapist. The list goes on and on. But that is the nature of an independent film.
Indeed.
I was curious what our actual final budget was, because my memory was it was like 3 acorns, a bucket of spit, and a handshake.
It's something very close to that.
Yeah, it's the beautiful thing about this kind of work. Everyone's there for the right reason. Because the movie's made in 3 hunks. Was there a point when you were in post-production, you were in editing, and had you always known it's not going to be 1, 2, 3, like it's going to go like that? Or did you watch what it was and go, oh, it's, I see. I feel like I remember you saying, I now see how to tell it. You know?
I thought that it was going to be 1, 2, 3 until the very end. And,
silly.
and so we got each part edited. We put them together. And it was 2.5 hours long, and watched it. And it was like, and then it was like, it didn't work. It didn't hold the tension or like the mystery for us. It was kind of just a lot of good stuff going by, and we got kind of lulled into it. And so that's when I realized I had to break it all down and start figuring out a way to intercut. And it was kind of interesting. It was like very interesting, the intercutting part, because none of it was planned, of course. Yeah. So it was like, what do you base your moment that you're cutting between on? And usually it ended up being never story, but always either an image or like a image quality thing, or an actor quality thing, or like a feeling thing, like a feeling you get from a moment or the tone, basically.
Which, I mean, some people would be aghast at that and be like, that's so avant-garde and so William Burroughs. But the fact is, then you look at the movie and the movie makes perfect sense and lays out in this sort of very humanly linear fashion. But if you go look at it more closely, what you just said is exactly what is causing a transition, like a sense. A scene gives you a sense, and then you're in another sense, but you're a year earlier or a year later or whatever. Yeah. Because when we came back for 3, it was kind of more clear, like, all right, so this is not just going to sit, 1, 2, 3 in a row. And I had to not think about that.
Well, that's interesting, because for me, I was still sure it would sit 1, 2, 3 in a row.
I guess I just felt like passage of time, the astonishing difference in weather, like it just was like, I sort of sensed a challenge of just kind of being able to walk through it from A to C. And I remember having to get out of my head and be like, that's not my job now, because it wasn't my job on 1 and 2. Just, actors, it's the Spencer Tracy thing, stand there and mean it, that it really, to some extent, we don't have any more of a job than that, which has a nice safety net, because then if it sucks, it's somebody else's fault. But like, you want to know your character, but you want to get most of that in interaction with the other performers and with what the words tell you to do and be. But like, you can't go and be like, oh, this is going to be sort of interestingly edited. So how do I need to relate to who I may have been in the first shot? I mean, blah, blah, blah. That gets in your way and makes you a lesser performer. Yeah. And at 1, 2, and 3, other than the cold and the frostbite, I got that one toe stitched back on, so don't worry about it. Was very, very comfortable, and that goes.
I'm glad to hear that, because because it's a lot of uncomfortable scenes. Like every scene is meant to be as uncomfortable as possible.
Partially, our comfort in those scenes is helped by your clear discomfort, because you managed to figure out how to get behind a camera and make the camera work in some of the least comfortable spaces ever designed, like the Marquis de Sade put together your shot list, you know?
Well, you also have a talent for simplicity, I think, and like that's what I so much appreciated about you and like many of the actors in this is they're just willing to be there, you know, and it sounds so simple and so silly, but it's really not. And it's you know, just being present there is a beautiful, beautiful thing, you know, and really was very necessary for this too, because all of the adult actors were kind of number one, kind of competing with animal actors and child actors, who is always kind of like a tough thing to do, but also were really there as a presence in support of this young girl who was discovering acting for the very first time. And, you know, I think it really, that was part of what made me cast all of the adults, is that I knew that they would bring support to Audrey, you know, and it, of course, like they're always in these situations that is not supporting her at all in the like
the character
in the characters
isn't supported for 1 nanosecond throughout the entire movie. But no, we were
all of the actors were like pure support for her.
Yeah.
Rick is a very nuanced guy, and in the script for part 1, he really, on the page, he's pretty bad. Like he's not, he only does pretty bad things, you know? Right. But for some reason I'm wondering how and why you made him so sympathetic.
I mean, I feel like if you can't find the humanism in a character, or the humanity in a character, either because the writing doesn't allow for it and yours totally allowed for it, or just because of the way the character is placed in the story, you have to fall back on caricature and just sort of do the best you can and get it over with, because it's just not there. And Rick, I don't know, he immediately read to me as a survivor, but who had not been beaten down by it and didn't piss and moan about it. Like he was scrapping and hustling all the time, but I don't know if it was an arrogance or just who he was. Like, that's not going to bum him out, you know? So he can find pleasure and see beauty and see innocence as long as it doesn't get in his way, you know? And that sort of very generally is what occurred to me, you know, from page 1. And I just feel like the bad guy is almost always a caricature unless there's a depth to it, you know? And that's what can be great about a well-written and a well-presented bad guy. Like, if they don't have this sort of fleshiness of a real full character, then they're worthless.
Other question for you. I'm just curious. Do you think of this film differently or feel differently about this film now that you have a young daughter?
Oh,
because Kavita was born like at the end of part 2, I think.
Yeah, she's 3.5 now. So when I first time I saw the movie full through with a kid, I think I got angrier at Jesse, because Rick wasn't Rick's job, wasn't Rick's kid, you know, it was her kid. And so like the moment where we're in the Bronco, Audrey and I are in the Bronco, and my response to her question is, you know, no, hey, she fucked up. Like, that was a nice release to say when we shot it, and it was a nice release to hear. Like, it is not the kid's fault. It is not the kid's fault. Let them grow up 10 years and then they'll do shit that's their fault. But at that point, it is not their fault, and it's somebody else's fault, because no negative act is blameless. Something causes it. So yeah, it it changed my general wiring, but not my like specific reaction to the movie, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But the kid she ties up,
It's a real.
that, I mean, that's just partially I wasn't there for that sequence. So it was new to me when it came up. And like, kids, it's just innocent play. It is, you're right. But oh my God, the reflection that is of who we are as a nation. And that casting for him, man, he's perfect. That kid, just freaking perfect. That moment,
he's amazing.
Was really rugged to watch. But I appreciated it. I appreciate all of the things that are hard to watch in this movie. I mean, you and I made one up with the scar scene. Like let's see what we can do. I mean, I remember we having a very specific discussion, like, if somebody sees this moment as over the line, as inappropriate, it's their fault, because we worked so hard to not leave any implication, to not make it seem pedophilic or sickening. It was just the way these two people, the weird but honest and straight up way these two people relate.
No, but part of that scene is that everyone will see it like that.
Exactly.
Given who your character is, right, given the situation, given the world and how the world, things go in the world, everyone will see it like that. I remember shooting that scene and then after it, having like a really visceral chills moment and just being like, I don't know, but that something was happening there that is very like perturbing and interesting, I mean, and totally ambiguous. Like there's no grasp on.
That's what we talked about. Like, it's on the one hand, it is completely unambiguous what's actually happening, and that's our job to make sure that that's what happens just physically. But the ambiguity that comes from actually seeing it when you cut it, when it's done, is. But I feel like it was really important to both of us that the audience sees it that way, if they see it that way.
Right. It's their.
We didn't build
their filter. Yeah, exactly. But that's I think that's like one of the strengths of the film is that everything bad or not everything, but a lot of the really bad stuff comes from the audience's filter.
Right.
We're just putting it out there. And many of these situations, bad things don't happen, but their minds go there.
It's never clear cut. If it's clear cut, you're dumb. That was, I loved doing that scene, and that everybody was brave enough or up for it or trusting enough. Everybody was trusting. And I'm really glad that I got to do something with the 3 awful scars I had on the side of my body from blowing out my lung twice. Those are healing up now, and I want to be able to remember them and be like, see, I got something out of that.
Well, you suggested that you had these scars. The scene was not in the film. And you were like, hey, I've got these scars. And, if you want to use them for something, know that they're there. And I was like, okay.
No, I remember looking at them one day in the mirror and being like, these will show up on camera. And so I offered them up because it just seemed like that's something incredibly human. I'm just really pumped that scene made it and that it ended up looking the way it did. And I remember, I think you were curled up under a bathroom cabinet to shoot it. Yet again.
I think both of us were very uncomfortable.
To get a shot. And people told me who tuned into the festival viewings and stuff, just like, oh my God, this movie is so fucking good. Why? What the hell? Why isn't anybody recognized? What the, and you always come back around to sort of the mainstream is a barrel of idiots, all trying to push each other aside so they can stare at their own navels. And this is not a movie that appeals to that. Thank God. And it's a pretty dark film. Like we're a pretty dark nation, damn it.
I know. I just find it
like,
but I think the darker the nation is, the more it just wants lighter fare, because it just can't handle its own darkness.
Yeah.
And I find that in myself too, as a viewer of things, sometimes there's so much darkness currently, especially, this last 2 years now, this weird new existence. I've always had a bit of an issue with calling movies entertainment.
Yeah.
But I think now maybe we're all just, just kind of in need of the simplicity of entertainment as entertainment.
Yeah.
And it makes it more difficult for this film to exist because it is, I think there's a lot of humor in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of quirk and interest, but I would not qualify it as entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, it's, but what the other side of that though is that I feel like the people who see and recognize it for what it is will be rabid, will be voracious for it. Those of us who are like, I don't, no offense to Tom Hanks or dogs, because they're both better than most people, but like, I don't need Turner and Hooch right now, because I want to keep tapped in to where we actually are as a country and as a people and all of that. And my wife, who has a much more international sense of the planet, got me into like Iranian film and Chinese film. And like, sometimes they're so stunningly sad. It's a beautiful sad, and that just feels human. And this feels, and in a way, like, it doesn't feel like an American film because of that, but at the same time, it feels like the American film, which is good because you got the flag on the poster. But like, we were doing a different talk thingy a while ago, and I said, I think Rick is the American dream. He's the embodiment of the American dream because it's down and dirty, and it may not be legal, but it is striving for something better than you started with, to raise yourself up. And it is something about the freedoms accorded people, even horrible people in this country, to try and better themselves. Sadly, sometimes it's at the detriment of everybody else. But and then it's slogging through this complete greed-based, avarice-oriented opioid pandemic that is solely manufactured by manufacturers. It's got nothing to do with the humans involved. They're just a target market. And so in that sense, it's incredibly American. It's just the scales have all fallen off the eyes, and this is what it actually is in a lot of places for a lot of people. Yeah, I love it. I'm proud of the work I did, but I'm more proud that I got to be involved because you made a kick-ass movie. Thank you. We made. That's true. It was your idea, man.
I thought about Rick's character for a long time, I got to tell you, and tried to cast him, and I couldn't find him. And I just, we went to school to undergrad together, and
you directed me.
You just kept coming into my mind, and I hadn't spoken to you for 20 years?
Probably 15, 20 years. Yeah.
15 years. And it was like, it's got to be Holter. I just need Holter. Like, I can't imagine Rick as anyone other than you.
I mean, I can't either, but that's ego. No, totally. Because you, like I was saying earlier about being trusted by the people who were making the movie you're in, like, you left Rick open in the words on the page. You didn't carve every move he made or every reason he did it. And so it was left to the person you cast. I think you do this universally, with all the characters, because that's the way you work. Like, okay, I cast you because I see the character in you. So now here's what they say, go do it and go be it. And so, yeah, I mean, that in some senses, that's the sort of greatest compliment you can get. And that people see a character and they're like, now I can't think of that character separated from you.
Yeah. I liked dressing him up in different clothes
Yeah.
with the third part, because suddenly it sort of changed him up a lot, you know?
I don't know if you remember Mark Lesser, another friend from Skidmore, and he preternaturally wore flip-flops, even from like freshman year. And I just gave him crap for it all the time. And I've always maintained, this is a belief of mine, that flip-flops are a sign of a broken man. And you put me in flip-flops in running with the drug. So not only was I wearing flip-flops, after the first take, they were completely covered in mud. So the squelching in that horrific sadistic thing that goes in between your toes. And I have to drive a Bronco fast around a corner, skid to a stop, leap out the door into mud, holding a bag of dope. We did a bunch of takes of that. And after like take 6, I took my phone and I photographed my like ripped up, gnarly, flip-flopped feet.
Really?
And sent it to Mark. And I just thought you would love to see this. Miss you. And I mean, that's true. Like, character is what they wear. And Rick was in a completely different place.
Yeah.
You know, he was so dismasted, to use the Melville. And no, this had to be sort of muddy. Everything about it had to be muddy. And you know, Rick didn't get checked.
After part 2, it actually felt kind of important to bring him down, like to show this, for him not to be like the survivor, you know, the good guy, because he's very ambiguous in part 2, but he is kind of the supportive, almost father figure.
Yeah. And but they can have feet of clay as well. Everything would have been different, and I don't think it would have been as good a story if Rick had prevailed. So
I do have one other question, actually, that I want to ask you, and that is, how did being a child actor, because how old were you when you started? Like 10?
13.
13. Okay.
How did quite youth, but a child?
Yeah, pretty young. And you started on some big stuff that young, like on Hairspray with John Waters was your first film, right?
No, that was my second. First movie I ever did was Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive, directed by Stephen King, the only one he ever directed. And it was explosions and weapons, even though I know weapons in film is a big topic right now. I had a 9mm British Sten fully automatic machine gun that I would blast. And we had a very good armorer, and so nobody ever got hurt, but still, you know. But anyway, I mean, I was 13 and a lot like Audrey. I mean, no acting before that. I did like Billy Idol lip syncs in elementary school. I won them, but I did them, you know, and that was it. The
question is, like, how has that informed you as an actor as you've grown, you know, over the years?
Doing something with someone like Audrey. And I mean, I've been involved in the Young Performers committees locally and nationally at the union since the day I was allowed, you know, and I'm the chair of one of those, and because that's really, really important to me. I see how lucky I was, and that I didn't have stage parents. I just had people who were like, this is weird, but if you're into it, you know, and that was it. And I see how the fact that you are a child is vastly important to getting cast and doing the job. The second you get the job, you're just a fucking professional. You know, they have the rules. We have rules and regulations about education and safety and everything else, and they're all good and are all put in place, but they're put in place by a group outside of the making of the movie. And in the moments when you're doing the acting, and in the moments when you're on set, you were treated as a member of the troupe. The troupe are actors. They're not children. They're not adults. They're actors. And that's like a psychological dichotomy that some kids just take to, and it's okay. And some don't. I think I got crazy lucky that the films I worked on were predominantly good people. And the like underbelly of the business didn't make it to me. It sure as shit could have, you know.
Yeah.
And I saw whiffs of it. But so like then you get to Audrey, and who's brand new, you know, but clearly good, clearly has the thing in them. And the love of something is incredibly dangerous if you're willing to damage yourself because you love it. I mean, I felt like Audrey trusted me partially because I came from that. And so I had a sense of her headspace of both the like trepidation, but also this burn to do it and do it right. You know, like to put in all of herself into each moment and to drain herself out. And as the professionalism side of it is you can't do that because you got to be good to go the next day. I can go back through a lot of recognizable names I auditioned against through the beginning of my career who are now dead. You know, I mean, River and Corey Haim, they came and went because it'll do that because the business doesn't give a fuck. You need to know that. And you can't hold it against the business, but you need to know it. You know, you and hopefully your family are going to be the only ones who give a shit about you, because the business, this is great. This is a commodity. Let's squeeze it until it's useless, and then let's throw it aside. You know. So yeah.
So would you say you're more wary than now because you grew up in that?
I'm more wary for kids. I mean, I'm a hardened, cynical bastard, so I'm not worried about me. But and I mean, also physically, I've survived some things where not a lot bugs me in that way anymore. Like, well, I'm breathing.
Right.
So that doesn't piss me off the way it used to. But no, I'm definitely more leery and wary on behalf of the young performers. Because you still see it. I mean, it's sad to use the term crop, but like every crop that comes through, you can peg the same faces. They're like, I'll do anything. Oh my God, this is so great. I'm attention that I don't get at home, or I'm getting attention that is just so much bigger and brighter than, you know, and it's in some ways it's an opioid, you know. Attention at the professional level is OxyContin, you know. And you need somebody to kind of be like, I'm your sponsor, so we're stopping now. You know, now we're going to drink orange juice and maybe read. But you did great with Audrey, because you pushed her when she needed to be pushed. It was never mean, and it was never not in her best interests. It was never without her best interests at heart. You know, I mean, believe me, I've worked with people and I've heard of people who, given the same job with the same person, would have really done her damage. Nature of the story and her age and the rough and tumble nature of doing it as an indie, you know, and you didn't do that. You made sure that didn't happen, and should be praised for that and emulated by lots of other people in the industry.
Thank you. Yeah, she's just so special, but it's true. It's like because of the nature of like a willing child, you know, which is kind of part of the story of this, you know, like this story is this child is willing to go anywhere and do anything for a little bit of guidance or company or affection or warmth or, you know, really anything. And that's a dangerous place to be, you know, to be open like that. And we see that danger all over. So it was kind of interesting to, I guess, unconsciously be realizing that also with the actor. And
it's good that she's a crack shot. That helps. I think that, you know, it's like, well, if all else fails, she can hit a bottle on her first try at 50 paces with a revolver. So she'll probably be okay. But yeah, no, very much so. The rest of us poor sodden adults had to deal with kids and animals. And I love that. I mean, I don't remember where I heard it, but like Animals on Stage, the reason that's such a difficult thing is because everyone will always watch the animal, because the animal is truly present.
Yeah.
And therefore unpredictable. And, any actor who can harness just the tiniest bit of that is gold. But like, I love it. I mean, I've had weird, I worked with Ace and Audrey, and I worked with Anna Paquin and Geese, and I feel blessed. I feel lucky to have had those opportunities, because like, it's also a great up your game impetus, I have to be better than this fucking goose or I'm screwed, or I'm not even in the scene, or
I have to be here with this.
Right.
Dude,
yeah. Right, exactly.
Like otherwise he's here. Like that's the sign when you can see that someone isn't there.
Yeah.
Because someone is.
Right.
Like that's the terrible thing.
The contrast that can be brought.
Right. They reveal the artifice.
Somebody's not. Yeah, totally. All, pay attention. Don't pay attention to that horrible actor behind the curtain. Yeah, no, but I mean, it's great because it shows you in a sensual, and I mean that literally, not like sexy, like in a senses way of what presence is.
Yeah. Thanks so much for talking with me. It was so nice to see you again. It's been such a long time.
Thank you very much for making this movie and allowing me to be there when you made it. I mean that.